everyone out there in Toyland. My name is Scott Toy Guru Neitlich, and you may be wondering why I'm wearing an admiral hat now. Well, it's thanks to this video's sponsor. I mean, have you ever wanted to be an admiral? Well, no, not that kind of admiral, this kind of admiral. Who doesn't spend all of their time dreaming of wearing silk stockings and long hats and having a crew to sail around the world, but you may not just be able to afford a commission? Well, thanks to today's sponsor, PurchaseCommissions.com, you too can be an admiral.
How can I be an admiral without my cap?
No, don't worry about that. They'll give you the hat, they'll give you the coat, they'll even give you all the shiny little buttons and medals to make it look like you've been through actual war and combat. All you have to do is buy 1 fathom of water. It's about 2 feet. Is how much a fathom is, and you'll get an official certificate saying you own that specific fathom of water and this cool t-shirt telling your friends that you're an admiral, because what's the point of buying an admiralty if you can't tell all your friends you have one? So check them out. All right, back to today's video. So I want to talk about when toys end, and I don't mean like the fiery death that traumatized children at the end of Toy Story, or even, giant piles of garbage. I mean when a Toyland is canceled, meaning canceled before its time, right? Maybe when it was getting really good and you wanted more. Well, obviously we see things change in the toy aisle all the time. In fact, there's a turnover happening right now. It's January 2023 when I'm recording this. And there's a lot of brands that stick around for a long time. These are called evergreen brands, things like Marvel, Star Wars, Jurassic Park. Not all brands have this power. In fact, most don't. In fact, we are skewed heavily to really not realize how many new toys are coming out all the time, like as in, constantly. Toys like Star Wars that we grew up with tend to throw us off a little bit because the ones that become part of pop culture, well, these are really beyond the bell curve. Most toy lines out there really have about 6 months. That's it. That's the average for your toy line. Your Power Rangers and your DCs and your Marvels and, your Teenage Mutant Ninja Widget Turtles. You got to compare those outliers to the literal hundreds and hundreds of movie, content, and original IP that's put out there by toy companies every single year. And while there are a few occasionally that do break through and have kind of their cult following, there's not too many people asking for Animax or, Dragonflies to come back. They just are kind of done. Now, the other issue is it takes 3 years to develop a toy line from concept to shelf. Usually that's especially when you're dealing with a licensed line where you have to, loop in a, movie studio. But most stores only have about a 1-year ordering window, or like maybe a year and a half, which means sometimes they can cancel a line while it's still in development, and it's kind of like having the rug pulled out from under you. You're still making a toy line, expecting to sell it in, but something changes, and a retailer's no longer interested. We saw this back in the, vintage era all the time with things that would show up in catalogs, like Hero from the Masters of the Universe Grayskull relaunch in '87, or the second wave of Robin Hood Prince of Thieves toys that was, again, shown in a catalog, never produced, never shipped. More's the pity, because I really wanted that Lionheart figure. When I was at Mattel working on the Green Lantern theatrical line, again, more's the pity, that script was fantastic. Well, we had a whole second year planned because we assumed, based on that amazing script we read, that this was going to be an evergreen brand, no pun intended for Green Lantern. So a lot of work goes into toy lines ahead of time. Another good example was when the Star Wars movies were being released in 3D. And each 3D release was going to have a corresponding action figure and consumer product line. The idea was to release episode 2 and 3 also in this 3D version, and likewise have packaging and product out there to correspond with all of these major content releases. But something happened. Things changed, and in this case it was that Lucas sold Star Wars to Disney, which means all the plans for these 3D releases and their figure lines were now, having the rug pulled out from under them. One of the other lines that was developed for the episode 2 3D release was a Build-A-Droid set that was, a little bit more collector-friendly from the Kid Yoda line with the action features. Now, most of these figures did get released eventually as part of what was the 3 3/4 Black series in 2013. You can notice how heavy this line skewed to Attack of the Clones characters. That's why they were developed originally for a line that was meant to ship with the 3D release of Episode 2, And while some were produced, because these did make it all the way to production, the solution had to be finding an alternative way to sell them, because you can't sell this line into retail when it's so limited. In this case, the solution became Amazon, and Amazon got an exclusive set where you could get all these figures on the intended card back had plans not changed. Figure was the same as the 3 and 3/4 Black Series, but regardless. Another good example is the Indiana Jones Lost Wave that was released at Comic-Con. Again, same thing, a product line that was in development, and things changed. In this case, what changed was Kingdom of the Crystal Skull did not perform as well and did not make Indiana Jones an evergreen line. It can only be at retail during a movie year. So the final wave, which was designed to follow up, had to get pushed along to Comic-Con. And why was this? Why produce a figure line for Comic-Con that's been canceled at retail? Well, it really all has to do with where you are in production. And while we did get probably the best Indiana Jones of the 3 and 3/4 line with this set, it was meant to just be a standard retail line. This was not developed for Comic-Con. It's basically because of how the toy industry works with what's called tool lit. It's the milestone in the production process where you go all the way right up to the start line. Everything is done except paying that giant, huge bill that could be up to $100,000 per figure for the tooling, the big giant metal, case that the plastic injection molding is done through. This is that one-time investment. Most toy lines go all the way up to that line and only get the trigger pulled on tooling when you have an order in hand. But sometimes, because of the 3-year development cycle versus the 1.5 year buying cycle, you could say accidents happen and product gets tooled that doesn't have an order. That's exactly what happened with this Indiana Jones set, and likewise, it's rare. This doesn't happen that much, but it can pop up. Most of the time, product is just being worked on, developed. When Toy Biz ended its Marvel Legends run, there were a ton of drawings for what was going to be additional waves. But drawings cost very little money, as does cardboard mock-ups. So we got to see what they were planning to do without actually seeing any of the final tooled product, because again, when a brand doesn't have an order against it, you're going to revert to, well, not tooling it. And luckily, these didn't make it past just images on paper, which is what we always said, it was kind of the cheapest form of toy production before major money is spent. That's really what it all comes down to, is getting that order. But the hatchet can come at any time. You never know what event. Toy line may not sell, content may not be as hot, the owner might sell it to another owner and the IP changes hands. Things happen, things change, and that is why toy lines can sort of get axed in the middle of development. I hope this video was helpful at looking at how some toy lines end while they may still be at retail and end up with some figures almost produced or maybe produced, and what happens to them when the tooling does get spent on a toy line that doesn't go on. Thanks for watching, thanks for sharing, and please remember to keep coming back here weekly for awesome toy news only on Spector Creative.